Saturday kicks off a new fishing season in all 67 Pennsylvania counties. But before you go and hang out with the trout, it's a good idea to become familiar with recent and current weather. Your safety and success on the stream could depend on it. Penn State has been a leader in fly fishing education for just shy of a century. The program was originally developed by the legendary George Harvey in 1930. It has evolved over the last 9 decades, now falling under the direction of George Daniel.
This is just a kind of a lifelong dream, being able to come here to Penn State and teach a historic program.
Ideal fly fishing conditions are largely impacted by the weather. Not only how the weather impacts the streams and the fish, but especially the insects. Fly fishing revolves around the imitation of insects to bait trout, making successful fly fishermen the anglers that are most aware of what is happening on a stream.
Long story short, when you have insect activity, you have trout activity. Trout are just masters of efficiency. They are not going to be moving during periods where there are not really many insects that are essentially drifting. So what I'm saying here is that so many of our insects, like the types of insects that are aquatic that eventually emerge and become winged adults, many of them are light sensitive. So often these insects hatch during like low light periods, maybe cloudier periods, maybe rain, drizzle.
This also creates a big misconception when it comes to the ideal fishing conditions.
When people think about fly fishing and just, when you walk along the stream or you drive along the stream, when you have these beautiful bluebird sky days and clear water, I mean, this is a beautiful day to be out, but it's not always the best day to be fishing. In most situations, when you have lower light periods and you have right ideal water temperatures, you often get some of the best fishing opportunities.
And those high dew point days with oppressive humidity, those are good too.
But when you have moisture, it takes a lot longer for these adult insects to dry their wings and fly away from the water. So basically it keeps them on the water, and trout know that. It just basically elongates the time period that these insects are struggling on the water. Where you compare it, like you go out west to places like Colorado, and where basically you may have warmer days in some situations, but you have less humidity. A lot of times those insects can dry off their wings in a split second. They can basically break through the surface and pop off, not really creating much of an opportunity to catch fish.
To maximize the fishing experience, all of these other conditions need to team up with ideal water temperatures for trout. Those range from the mid-50s to the low 60s. It's an important threshold for anglers to keep in mind, especially as we get into the hotter summer months.
If you have water temperatures that are 67 or greater and that fish is pushed under stress, if you hook it and that fish is basically under some degree of stress, it's fighting for its life, it's more probable that it will die.
Luckily, a majority of Pennsylvania streams are spring-fed, so dangerously high water temperatures are rather rare.
It is like a giant, almost like AC unit, where the water is coming under the ground. It's fairly regulated. Compared to streams that are influenced from like rainwater or from the mountains where those water temperatures will fluctuate greatly, our streams are fairly regulated.
That being said, if we get into a prolonged period of hot, dry weather in the heart of summer,
it wouldn't hurt to bring a thermometer. And if you start seeing temperatures in the 60s, high 60s, close to 70s, that's where you just stop fishing, because fish can still survive, but if you catch them and you play them, you could potentially be giving them their death sentence by doing so.
These important fly fishing principles are just a sample of the things that George makes sure to cover in the classroom.
These students, I mean, they're getting ready to get into the real world, and they're going to be dealing with high levels of stresses within their professional and personal lives. And one of the things that we all need is some way of decompressing. And anymore these days, it's so difficult to basically become unplugged. We're just stressed, we're on our phones all the time. But there's great activities, including like fly time, fly fishing, where activities where, whether you want to think of it as a meditative state or whatever, but basically where you just focus on this, basically the moment of now, and you're not worried about the past, you're not worried about the future, you're kind of just focused at the task at hand. And there's something very therapeutic and very rewarding about being able to perform these very simple tasks.
Simple tasks for a fun hobby with important implications down the road.
With the future prospect of development, clean water, natural resources, these are all things that are going to be kind of at risk or going to be continued to be at greater risk down the future. So we need stewards to basically be able to protect. And the only way someone's going to want to protect these resources is if they have some sort of vested interest in the in what better way, again, someone interested in the resource and an activity that connects them to that resource, like fly fishing.
So, with all of that groundwork laid, in the eyes of a very accomplished angler, what is the perfect fly fishing day weather wise?
I would say like late April, early May. You have a number of insects that are hatching all at the same time. You have ideal water temperatures. That high 50, low 60-degree temperature range is kind of like a peak, like an optimal temperature. That's when the trout are the most active. Maybe an air temperature that's maybe in the low to mid 60s, but you have like drizzle, like a light rain. That is like magic.
And if you want to become an amateur angler as prime time approaches, George recommends a couple of great resources.
One's called the Bug Book. The other one is called the Pocket Guide to Pennsylvania Hatches. These are like two very simple books that basically explain, because, like I said, trout become active when insects are active. So it's really plays in your best hand as a fisher to understand the time of the year, the types of insects that are hatching during that time of the year, and usually when those insects hatch. It's advantageous to actually just understand and have a book that is basically understands at like a second grade level, which is where I read, that basically lays out the information in very simple terms as it relates to fly imitation and being a better angler.
For Weather World, I'm Ben Reppert.